Terrorism is one of the greatest challenges to global peace and security in the 21st century. These acts of terrorism have sent many civilians, population around the world to their early grave. Properties worth millions, billions of nairas or dollars have been destroyed through their activities. A terrorist is the person who engages in the act of terrorism. It can be international, it can also be domestic. Terrorists can be an individual, it can also be in groups. Terrorist financing is the provision or collection of funds with the intention to be used to carry out acts that support terrorists or terrorist organizations.
Terrorism financing is a big challenge, not only in Nigeria, it's a global challenge, and that is why a lot of agreements, treaties are being signed by different countries.
Terrorist financing is one of the most difficult aspects of countering terrorism to address because of its innocuous nature. Things are done in the dark. You discover that even personal finances, people tend to hide them from even their spouses and their friends, not to mention an act that is criminal.
Last year, I did a multi-part investigation about the new finance schemes of terrorists, especially in the Northwest. A lot of things, we've spoken about arms trafficking, we've spoken about drug trafficking, but we are not talking about how terrorists are actually dominating ungoverned spaces and how terrorists are imposing illegal taxes, making multi-millions of naira, from the people they are terrorizing. And the government appears to be helpless. The people now even rely and believe in the terrorists more than the government. If the terrorist gives an order, they would rather listen to the terrorists than the government agencies. You will see the people even commercializing information dissemination to terrorists. They are the ones informing terrorists that soldiers are coming. Because if they don't do it, the terrorists will fall back to them.
It is largely said that the tier funds, the funds that are being raised, are outside of the financial system. To an extent, that is correct, because they largely operate in ungoverned spaces.
The purpose of terror or terrorist financing is not to hide illegal money, but to suppress a population or state through violence and coercion, and raise funds to finance criminal acts.
Another thing that we are not talking about is how terrorists are even grabbing lands, engaging in illicit farming, making multi-millions of naira from farming. They will grab land from citizens. They will farm on the land, and they will still ask citizens to farm on this land, force them to work on the farm, then gather the proceeds and use it to fund their own activities.
Terrorist financing is the center of gravity of terrorism. There's an adage that says, follow the money trail.
Most of the activities are informal, fine. These monies are raised largely in cash, but it does not end there. Based on the perspective of an analyst, it does not end there. We have seen that there is a constant interaction between the money that is raised, that is cash, and the financial system during the course of moving the funds. It is either moving the funds physically and passing the funds through the financial institutions, or using the channels that have been created to aid financial transactions. Which is more popular these days? The POS.
There is a clear distinguishing factor between terrorist financing and money laundering. Yes, it's a slim line, but we have to be very careful and understand how these two things work.
Terrorist financing refers to financing of terrorist acts. It may be individual terrorists or terrorist organizations.
When you're talking of money laundering, there is definitely that illegality, the proceeds of crime, the criminal activity must have taken place. The money is dirty and it has to be laundered. But in the case of terrorist financing, completely different.
Money laundering is the processing of assets from criminal activities to cover their illegal origins. Terrorist financing raises money to support terrorist activities.
Mr. A can use his legitimate money, which does not even look suspicious. It will not fall under the CTR or STR or whatever you think. If you are looking at it on the radar, it is not there. Because this money is something that the ordinary businessman on the streets also spend.
Terrorists use money laundering techniques to avoid detection by authorities and to protect the identities of their sponsors and the beneficiaries of the funds.
Terrorism financing has been recognized in our laws as a predicate crime to money laundering. So any activity that takes place at the raising level, the moving level, or the expenditure level is recognized as money laundering.
They raise funds for legitimate sources, such as personal donations and profit from businesses and charities, as well as criminal sources, such as drug trafficking, smuggling of weapons and other goods, fraud, abduction, and extortion.
Why do terrorist organizations need funds? They need them to conduct operations. This conduct of operation is both operational requirements and logistical requirements. They also need them to maintain their cells and enlarge their cadres. They need terrorist financing to maintain their infrastructure. They need it for training and travel. They need it to build false identities and procure false documentation. There's no terrorist who goes around using his real identity. And that's why for Boko Haram, you find Abu Sa'ad, Abu Hanifa, Abu Sadiq. What they do is they just create names of alleged kids and use them. And you can find somebody having 3 or 4 aliases.
We have neglected identity, citizen identity. You can operate in this country, spend a lot of money without footprint. You can travel everywhere without footprint and spend all the money. And most importantly, this money is generated locally, like has been said.
These terrorists are also diversifying their methods of generating income. They know you are tracking them. They know they can't have bank accounts. They know they can't do a lot of things. So they are using other methods. You know, why you think they are still here? They are already there. So why you think they are still focused on kidnapping for ransom? They are moved elsewhere. They are thinking of something. They are strategizing.
And how do they do it? It's very, very simple. As a matter of fact, in this country, our economy is still informal, basically informal. A lot of transactions go on outside the books. And once you have that, you are going to have challenges in tracking them.
Both money laundering and terrorist financing involve the use of networks to hide or conceal the origin of funds. Their activities can destabilize the economy of any country, be it in Nigeria or Africa as a continent.
Agencies, including international agencies, focus too much on the radar. They've created a radar and they are watching the radar. But the terrorists have gone below the radar. They are operating below the radar. And what do I mean by operating below the radar? It means, for example, their cells are independent. So you cannot find a network that communication is operating and security agencies are watching in a radar the network going on here and there. No, they have become so independent and localized.
While some terrorists involved in terrorism as a divine act, others see it as a means of transforming their economic conditions.
The opportunity that this terrorism creates for everybody, the law enforcement, the military, everybody. I came across a certain case sometimes in 2013, 2014 in Zaria. It's a live case, the bombing that took place in Zaria. Do you know how much the then chairman of the local government made from that bombing? Is a possibility he can even ask for another bombing to happen because it's an opportunity? No, these are real things. People make money from these things. Why are we not discussing this? We need to look at how much is budgeted for everybody to carry out these activities. How much is spent? How much is stolen from it?
Increase in poverty level among the populace, low wages, and high rates of unemployment all encourages these acts.
The issue of the train hijack. Today, there are people that leverage on that opportunity to make a lot of money. Some of them are in court today, and prosecution is ongoing.
Terrorists could be seen differently depending on where you are looking at it from. This is why the motive for terrorism is either rightist, leftist, or people-centered. And this is responsible for the popular saying that one person's terrorist is another freedom's fighter.
In January, the CBN imposed a cashless policy in Nigeria to tackle terrorist financing and money laundering and all that. But we find out that in the Northwest and some parts of the country, terrorism still continues despite this withdrawal of cash from circulation. A lot of people were paying ransom with gold, with cattle, with a lot of stuff, and this thing still did not stop. So I think at one angle we focus more on the things that people are not talking about, the things that our attentions are not there. It's like we leave the most important things we are talking about, the things that are not relevant at the moment.
Both money laundering and terror financing diverts resources away from economically and socially productive uses, and this has negative effects on the country's financial institutions.
We must look below the radar now, rather than fixing our attention to radar. A lot of organizations, Nigeria belongs to many of them, and yet the speaker talked about GIABA, talk about all the international organizations and so on and so forth. But all of them are still focused on the radar rather than below the radar. And these terrorists have gone below the radar.
The EFCC as an agency has a full-fledged department which works with the NFIU and other related agencies to monitor movement of funds. Even in the course of our regular investigation, if we have reason to suspect any transaction, we go in depth to look at it, if it is linked with terrorism financing.
Terrorism, corruption, money laundering, and terrorist financing all fall under the concept of organized crime. It strives through networking. It is like a web, a chain of activities with each person expected to carry out specific tasks within the group. Therefore, there is the link or relationship between corruption, money laundering, and terrorist financing.
For the EFCC, we'll be doing quite a lot to stem the tide of terrorism financing.
Just like oxygen is to human, terrorism financing is also cardinal to every operation of every terrorist group. They see it very imperative, very important to their activities.
So I think what we should do is to improve our intelligence gathering a lot and to also improve our internal security. And that is what our reports do at Tupanangu, to ensure that security agencies know what is actually on the ground. Because we are actually on the ground, we follow the issues. I hardly spent 1 month in Abuja without being in the Northeast or Northwest to know the things that are happening on the ground.
Non-kinetic approach to fighting terrorism is key, is very, very crucial.
Do we have the capacity to stem terrorist financing, banditry, kidnapping, porous border? Yes, we do. If anybody tells you we don't have the capacity, tell him we have. You have the NFIU, excellent presentation. You have the DSS, very well articulated. The EFCC I want to believe, because I have experience from the EFCC, they are better than the FBI and the CIA.
Once you can identify the money trail and starve any terrorist organization of its funding, then you are more than halfway towards countering terrorism.
Financing itself is the lifeblood of terrorism. And if you block it, you have done 60 to 70% of the job.
We have to be realistic and look at things from both corruption, money laundering, terrorist financing, and the opportunities these things create. Then we should take away the opportunities, and I believe things will get better.
Nigeria should engage in information exchange with other countries, such as alignment with Interpol, which I believe is ongoing. There is also need for bilateral relationship with sub-regional organizations, such as the International Chiefs of Police Association, ICPA, to get legal assistance in criminal matters and extradition.
They say we need the political will for the government to act to deal with this problem. But more importantly, also, we as members of the civil society need to cooperate with these institutions to be more effective and robust in their response.